When she texted, "You're too nice. I need a winner," the words landed like a thrown glass, sharp, surprising, and oddly revealing. I stared at my phone longer than I should have, watching the little gray bubbles hesitate as if daring me to respond in anger, in shame, in desperate pleading. Instead I breathed, and the reply that finally formed in my head was quiet, not cruel. "I hope you find what you're looking for." Then I hit send and waited to see what would happen to a man who finally decided to stop apologizing for being kind. We met at a friend's birthday party on a humid Saturday night, the kind of accidental meeting that feels like fate when you're young and willing to believe in sparks. Vanessa laughed like someone who expected the world to lean back and listen. She wore confidence like a jacket, and it suited her. I was quieter, the steady kind of person who sketches his life in small, deliberate lines, weekend hikes, the same barista at the coffee shop, careful plans. At first the differences were intoxicating. She taught me how to be bolder in little ways, and I taught her how to slow down and notice the small, soft things that matter. For a while, our differences felt like the spice that made everyday life taste memorable. The early months were effervescent, full of the things you trade when you're building intimacy, late-night conversations that lasted until the sky turned light, weekend trips where we got lost and laughed about it, the quiet ritual of making each other small breakfasts on lazy Sundays. She told me, often and sincerely, that she loved how I made her feel safe. "You're not like the other guys," she said, and I swallowed that like a compliment and let it become part of me. I thought I knew what she meant, that I was reliable, tender, present. I thought she wanted depth. I wanted depth too, and I gave what I had without counting the cost. But patterns reveal themselves in the small, repeating moments we tend to overlook. Her compliments sometimes came wrapped in a backhandedness that slowly taught me to shrink. She'd joke about my nice guy tendencies in front of friends, laugh about how I always picked the responsible option, and then watch how the world reacted. People liked her edge, they bought into it. I laughed along when it landed at first, because who wants to be the person who can't take a joke? But humor became a way to normalize derision. She started measuring love and excitement rather than kindness, in loud gestures rather than quiet consistency. Little digs about ambition or spontaneity cut deeper than she intended. I began to notice an increasing hunger in her eyes, cravings for drama, for validation, for being dazzled. The things I valued most, stability, empathy, the slow accumulation of trust, were suddenly the things she dismissed as lacking. Then came the night that was small and ordinary and would later feel like the hinge of the story. I sent Vanessa a picture of a restaurant I'd found, a little place she had once mentioned liking, planning a surprise date. Her reply was shorter than usual, clipped. I teased her back, and she answered with a line I remember with the clarity of a bell tolling, "You're too nice. I need a winner." The punctuation was casual, the tone offhand, but the message behind it was blunt and absolute. She wasn't asking for a conversation. She was issuing a verdict. The thing that hurt most wasn't the rejection, it was the revelation that kindness had become a fault to her, as though gentleness were synonymous with weakness. When people call you too nice, it can feel like being accused of a crime you didn't know you were committing. For months after that message, I replayed it in my head, trying to map out where I went wrong. I revisited arguments, rewound conversations, and tried to locate the moment kindness had been reinterpreted as timidity. But the truth was simpler. She wanted fireworks and risk the way some people want roller coasters. She craved the sensation of being alive in a particular, loud way that I simply didn't provide. Being a winner, to her meant being someone who made bold displays, who could be unpredictable and enthralling, even if that unpredictability came with collateral damage. I didn't answer her text in panic or rage. Instead, I did something that felt foreign after all those nights spent trying to fix things. I chose myself. I spent that evening sitting on my balcony with a beer, watching the city breathe, and thinking about the quiet dignity of a life not designed around someone else's approval. I typed back one sentence, calm, clear, and sent it. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Vanessa. Just remember, winners don't always finish with hearts intact." Then I put the phone away and did not ring her back when she called. For a while, nothing happened. I told some friends, and they offered the usual condolences, angry encouragement to show her, jokes about dating apps, the performative bravado of people who sometimes confuse vengeance with healing. But the work I needed wasn't the kind that flashed on social media. It was quiet and mundane: sleep, exercise, reconnection with hobbies abandoned during the relationship, and a slow reclaiming of the versions of myself that had been narrowed to make room for someone else's taste. I started going to the gym not to change my body for anyone but to feel strong in my own skin. I picked up painting again, the easy kind I loved as a kid, and watched color come back into evenings that had been full of worry. I said yes to small invitations and no to things that felt like obligations disguised as love. When Vanessa resurfaced weeks later with a string of texts, "Hey, can we talk? I've been thinking," I ignored them. My silence was not cruelty, it was choice. She was trying to find a door back without accounting for the fact that doors close for reasons. Then one night she posted a photograph with someone else, sunglasses, a fancy jacket, a caption that whispered, "Power couple," in 1,000 carefully curated emojis. I felt an odd, clean relief. The man she'd chosen for winning wore the flashiest clothes of all, big gestures, loud pronouncements, and a charisma tailored for an audience. He was the type who could sweep a room and then leave a trail of emptiness for the rest of his life. Months passed. I rebuilt the scaffolding of a self that didn't rely on being chosen to exist. Work went well. I found meaning in mentoring younger colleagues and volunteering on weekends at a local shelter. I learned to be present with my own feelings without needing to neutralize them for someone else. Slowly, the wound stitched. It turns out resilience is not a heroic overnight transformation but the accumulation of modest acts. A jog when I didn't feel like it. A dinner with friends. Saying, "I don't know," instead of pretending certainty. I learned how to be firm without being harsh. How to say no to people who should never have been able to make me feel less by accident. Then one night, late and unexpected, a message came through. "I was wrong. You were the best thing that happened to me." It could have been a trap, a test, or simply a person trying on regret like an ill-fitting coat. I read it twice and felt a small, steady emotion, not jubilation or triumph, but a calm that arrived from seeing a chapter close. I replied succinctly and gently, "I'm glad you realized it. I hope you find peace." I already did. That was all. No lecture, no proclamation, no dramatics, just closure. I had refused to make the end sensational because the life I was building didn't need witnesses to validate its worth. There were moments after that tested me, mutual friends asking if I'd forgiven her, curious questions about whether I felt vindicated, old pangs of nostalgia when I stumbled upon a memory we'd shared. The truth is simple and stubborn: forgiveness and return are not the same. You can forgive someone without resuming the role you once occupied in their life. I forgave because carrying bitterness had become heavier than I wanted to be, but forgiving didn't mean letting someone redefine my boundaries. That distinction took time to understand and even longer to live by, but when you reach it, the world loosens its grip on petty resentments. Looking back, the most important lesson wasn't about her or even about me. It was about the shape of kindness. Being nice is not a strategy for survival or a calculated weakness. It's a discipline, a refusal to let the world harden you into something small. When someone calls you too nice, they are often revealing a preference, not issuing a moral judgment. They prefer drama, spectacle, the rush of conquest over the slow, sometimes invisible work of care. That problem is not yours to fix for them. Your job is to remain whole, to choose relationships that require mutual generosity rather than selfish performances. There were practical things I learned, too. I learned to name my needs early, to speak them in the calm room of conversation before resentment has a chance to put down roots. I learned to look for compatibility that values emotional labor instead of applauding grand gestures alone. And perhaps most of all, I learned to treasure dignity, the way it quiets the need for revenge and instead asks, "How do I become the person I want to be, regardless of others' choices?" The revenge some people fantasize about rarely feels as good as the quiet triumph of waking up content and knowing you didn't lose yourself to prove a point. In the years that followed, Vanessa's story became a small footnote, something mutual friends referenced with a sympathetic shrug. Her life, as it turned out, was a carousel of shimmering relationships that impressed initially and faded quickly. She learned the hard lessons of being wanted for effect rather than essence. I learned to welcome a different kind of love, one that required patience, mutual care, and the ability to remain kind without being a doormat. I found someone who loved the steady parts of me in the way I had learned to love them, not the dangerous highs but the reliable warmth, the steady presence through sickness and success alike. If someone tells you you're too nice, hear them, but not as a condemnation. Hear it as data about what they value, not a certificate of your worth. Kindness is not currency to be exchanged for love. It's the scaffolding of a life you can be proud of. Walk away if the person you love prefers spectacle over substance. Walk away not to punish them but to preserve the person you are. The most satisfying reply I ever gave to that text wasn't meant to wound, it was meant to set a limit and invite myself back into a life that matched my values. So if you're in the middle of a similar storm, know this: you don't owe anyone the continual erasure of yourself for their amusement. Choose kindness, yes, but choose boundaries too. Build a life that validates you even when others do not. In my case, the text that once hurt became a turning point, the moment I stopped trying to earn someone's approval by shrinking and started investing in who I truly was. That choice didn't make me bitter, it made me whole.